Chapter 3: Law, Environment and Ecology. Introduction. The dynamic field of environmental law is leading international efforts to maintain a balance between human activity and the protection of the planet's delicate ecosystems. In an era of declining natural resources, declining biodiversity, and increasing global temperatures, the need of environmental rules is growing. This inquiry seeks to dissect environmental law by looking at its basic goals, the relationship between science and policy, and how it is implemented locally and globally. The objective of this expedition is to decipher the intricacies of environmental law and appreciate its crucial function in instituting environmentally conscious behaviors and fostering a mutually advantageous relationship between humans and the natural world. 3.1. Understanding environmental law. Purpose of environmental law. The goal of environmental law is to provide a system of laws that directs human behavior toward sustainable practices, protecting the planet's natural resources and general health. It functions as a control mechanism, seeking to create a balance between preservation and growth, understanding that human progress cannot be made at the expense of the integrity of the natural world. Scientific foundation. Scientific knowledge and ecological principles are the foundation of environmental legislation. The complex interactions that exist between living things and their surroundings serve as a reminder of the fragile balance that supports life on Earth. 30. Ecological principles. These guidelines cover ideas like diversity, connection, and environmental responsibility. Sustainability highlights the necessity for human initiatives to coexist peacefully with environment throughout time. Diversity highlights the significance of varied ecosystems, and interdependence highlights the dependency of creatures on one another. Environmental factors. Among the issues that environmental law tackles include biodiversity, soil health, and the quality of the air and water. To provide effective environmental governance, these elements must be recognized and controlled. Defining the environment. It is crucial that terms be understood clearly. Define the natural world as including complex interactions between living and non-living things in addition to the physical environment. Therefore, the goal of environmental law is to protect not just the physical features of the natural world, but also the complex web of interrelationships that keeps life possible. Notions of environmental management and protection. Environmental law applies scientific knowledge to real-world situations, going beyond its theoretical foundations. To protect the long-term health of the natural Notions of environmental management and protection. Environmental law applies scientific knowledge to real-world situations, going beyond its theoretical foundations. To protect the long-term health of the natural environment and the people who depend on it, the process entails the creation and execution of policies, preservation strategies, and environmentally friendly resource management. A component of environmental management and preservation is the legal framework. This section aims to highlight the broad goals and scientific underpinnings of environmental legislation, providing a framework for a detailed analysis of all of its facets. 31. 3.2. Concept of environment and ecology. Environment. The nature weaves a rich and dynamic tapestry of interrelated ecosystems. The environment is recognized by environmental law as a complex system that is essential to the survival of all of its members, from microscopic creatures to large animals. Environmental law frameworks recognize the need to regulate human activity in order to maintain the integrity of natural ecosystems, and they are made to traverse this complexity. Environmental law legal frameworks acknowledge the need to regulate human behavior in order to maintain the integrity of natural ecosystems and are intended to help negotiate this complexity. Ecology. The scientific field of ecology is essential to comprehending the workings of life on Earth. In order to create rules that recognize the interactions between creatures, the cycling of materials, and the flow of energy in ecosystems, environmental law depends on ecological concepts. The necessity to protect certain creatures, natural habitats, and ecological processes is explained by the study of ecology. 3.2.1 Ecological Principles. Interdependence. It is acknowledged under environmental law that no element or organism can exist by itself. Behaviors reverberate across ecosystems, impacting not just the nearby environment but also the larger network of life. Interdependence-based regulatory systems seek to reduce unfavorable effects and advance peaceful cohabitation. Diversity. Ecosystem resilience is reliant on biodiversity. Environmental law recognizes the value of maintaining genetic diversity and a range of species. The goals of legislation are to protect 32. Endangered species, preserve natural areas, and promote environmentally responsible land use practices. Sustainability. The foundation of environmental law is the idea of environmental preservation. The guiding concept recognizes that human endeavors must function within the planet's ecological limitations. Environmental law rules help to preserve the fragile balance of nature over the long run. 3.2.2 Environmental factors. Air quality. Laws pertaining to air quality do more than only control emissions. They take into account the makeup of the atmosphere and how it affects climate control. Because the health of ecosystems and human populations depends on air quality, environmental legislation sets pollution regulations, encourages the use of renewable energy sources, and addresses air pollution internationally. Water quality. Water quality and environmental legislation are complicated topics. It sets standards for the quality of drinking water, controls pollutants in water bodies, and promotes wise water use. Regulations may also address problems such as overexploitation, pollution of rivers, and the preservation of aquatic habitats, therefore emphasizing the complex interplay between aquatic ecosystems. 32. Endangered species, preserve natural areas, and promote environmentally responsible land use practices. Sustainability. The foundation of environmental law is the idea of environmental preservation. The guiding concept recognizes that human endeavors must function within the planet's ecological limitations. Environmental law rules help to preserve the fragile balance of nature over the long run. 3.2.2 Environmental factors. Air quality. Laws pertaining to air quality do more than only control emissions. They take into account the makeup of the atmosphere and how it affects climate control. Because the health of ecosystems and human populations depends on air quality, environmental legislation sets pollution regulations, encourages the use of renewable energy sources, and addresses air pollution internationally. Water quality. Water quality and environmental legislation are complicated topics. It sets standards for the quality of drinking water, controls pollutants in water bodies, and promotes wise water use. Regulations may also address problems such as overexploitation, pollution of rivers, and the preservation of aquatic habitats, therefore emphasizing the complex interplay between aquatic ecosystems. 33. Soil health. Environmental laws in this sector prioritize ecologically friendly farming practices in addition to maintaining soil integrity and preventing erosion. Regulations to maintain the fertility and health of soils supporting a variety of ecosystems may include regulating land use, restricting the use of hazardous chemicals, and encouraging soil preservation practices. Biodiversity conservation. Protecting biological variety depends heavily on environmental legislation. It combats the illicit trade in wild animals and contains regulations for actions that lead to the extinction of species in addition to protecting natural surroundings. Since biodiversity is necessary for ecological stability, the emphasis goes beyond protecting individual species to include entire ecosystems. Since biodiversity is necessary for ecological stability, the emphasis goes beyond protecting individual species to include preserving entire ecosystems. 3.2.3 Defining the environment. Environmental media. Legal frameworks make it possible to regulate environmental media specifically. It recognizes that earth, water, and air are separate substances with special qualities and difficulties. Laws pertaining to certain media provide an all-encompassing and sophisticated approach. Ecosystem services. In environmental law, the importance of ecosystem services is becoming more widely acknowledged, and regulatory frameworks are starting to include these ideas. Acknowledging the benefits that humans receive from nature, such clean air, pollination, and stable climate, laws are designed to protect these benefits by prohibiting actions that might jeopardize the ecological processes that keep these benefits intact. 34. 3.2.4 Notions of environmental management and protection. Environmental management. It involves methodically organizing and carrying out regulations to control human activity in a responsible manner. In this context, environmental legislation covers a wide variety of tactics, such as eco-friendly resource exploitation, waste management, and land use planning. Diverse businesses should take environmental factors into account to reduce negative effects. Protection. Protecting natural ecosystems, species, and resources from harm is the main goal of environmental policy. In order to prevent pollution, habitat damage, and unsustainable exploitation, preventative actions must be taken. Laws establish a barrier that protects the environment's resilience and integrity. They acknowledge it as a necessary but limited resource. The study of the natural environment and its inhabitants aids in our understanding of the complex balance that sustains life on Earth. Based on these ideas, environmental law aims to resolve issues and encourage peaceful coexistence of human activity with the natural world. 3.3 Fundamentals of environmental law. 3.3.1 Concept of environmental law. Regulating human-environment interaction. An essential foundation for controlling the relationships between human activity and the environment is provided by the legal field of environmental law. This field recognizes the significant effects of human activity on natural systems, wildlife, and the health of the Earth as a whole. There is work involved in developing and enforcing laws, rules, and policies aimed at reducing and preventing environmental harm. 35. Addressing environmental harm. The primary goal of environmental regulation is to mitigate the growing risks associated with different human activities, including resource exploitation, industrialization, deforestation, and environmental deterioration. Environmental law aims to protect ecological stability, stop habitat loss, and guarantee the preservation of nature's resources in response to these challenges. Global and local application. The environmental law recognizes that environmental problems are global in scope and takes into account a variety of factors to address both global issues like climate change and local ones like air and water quality. It consists of international agreements, national laws, and municipal regulations. This dual focus illustrates the necessity of concerted efforts at all levels. 3.3.2 Influence of religious traditions. Cultural values and environmental ethics. Environmental law typically draws on the moral precepts and cultural values found in religion systems. Numerous faiths place great emphasis on the moral obligation of humanity to protect the environment, the holiness of nature, and the interdependence of all living things. These ideas instill a sense of reverence for the environment and an ethical basis for conscientious environmental care. Inspiring conservation practices. Laws with a strong religious foundation may encourage environmentally conscious behavior. Religiously motivated environmental laws frequently inspire people and communities to embrace eco-friendly practices, responsible resource use, and a profound respect for the natural world. They frequently go beyond simple compliance. 36. Promoting environmental justice. Religious views frequently incorporate notions of justice and fairness. Therefore, these traditions could have an impact on environmental laws, advocating for a fair allocation of environmental benefits and costs among various populations. Legal systems that are in line with larger cultural norms incorporate justice concepts. 3.3.3 Role of traditional communities. Communities. Indigenous knowledge and biodiversity conservation. Indigenous peoples are well knowledgeable in biodiversity preservation and sustainable resource management. The significance of using this indigenous knowledge into conservation initiatives is acknowledged by environmental legislation. Part of this is acknowledging the expertise of local people as land keepers and putting it into legal systems. Community engagement and collaboration. Collaboration between traditional communities and legal institutions is encouraged by environmental legislation. It entails valuing and upholding the land rights of Indigenous people, incorporating them in decision-making procedures, and establishing collaborations that improve the efficacy of environmental conservation efforts. Cooperation ensures that conservation initiatives are useful to both parties and pertinent to the local culture and environment. Safeguarding cultural heritage. There may be protections for Indigenous groups' cultural heritage within the legal system. Environmental laws recognize the close relationship between cultural practices and biodiversity preservation, and they work to protect both the biological diversity and the cultural diversity that are entwined with the natural environment. 37. 3.3.4 Key Pillars of Sustainable Development. 1. Environmental protection. Preserving ecosystem integrity. Ecosystem integrity is one of the main concerns of environmental law. This entails passing laws to protect biodiversity, natural ecosystems, and the long-term preservation of resources. To lessen the negative effects of human activity on the environment, legal frameworks establish standards for waste management, conservation techniques, and the quality of the air and water. Climate change mitigation. Global issues like climate change have a significant impact on sustainable development. Regulations pertaining to the environment include steps to lower greenhouse gas emissions, promote renewable energy sources, and adapt to climate change. The Paris Agreement is an example of collaboration to tackle climate change through legal structures. Natural resource management. Sustainable development requires the prudent management of natural resources. Regulations for the extraction, use, and preservation of resources including minerals, water, and forests are set forth by environmental laws. Environmental laws set these rules. These rules aim to reduce environmental damage, stop overexploitation, and promote environmentally friendly behaviors that maintain the health of ecosystems. 2. Social equity. Community engagement. The need of impartial decision-making processes is recognized by the legislative framework for environmental protection. Involving the community helps guarantee that a 38. Variety of perspectives, particularly those from marginalized or disadvantaged groups, are heard when making choices on the environment. Participatory methods aid in the creation of socially just and equitable policies. Environmental justice. Equitable distribution of the benefits and expenses of environmental activities is necessary for sustainable growth. Environmental laws address concerns of environmental justice by promoting equitable access to environmental resources and services. Cultural considerations. Preserving cultural heritage is a component of social fairness. One of the objectives of environmental legislation is to respect and acknowledge the cultural practices, traditions, and insights of many populations, especially indigenous ones. This integration guarantees inclusive and culturally appropriate environmental protections. 3. Economic viability. Green economy initiatives. Legislation pertaining to the environment aims to connect economic activities with environmental goals. It supports environmentally conscious economic policies that prioritize resource conservation, renewable energy, and environmentally beneficial practices. Legal frameworks use a variety of strategies to encourage enterprises to use eco-friendly practices, including tax incentives, subsidies, and regulatory compliance. Corporate social responsibility, CSR. Corporate social responsibility-focused legal frameworks are utilized to incorporate sustainability into business operations. Environmental rules may mandate that businesses 39. Consider and minimize their environmental effect, purchase eco-friendly equipment, and give back to the communities in which they operate. A balance between environmental responsibility and profit-making is encouraged by the CSR rules. Innovations and research. Ecological development is promoted by technological breakthroughs. By offering awards, financing for research, or safeguards for intellectual property, environmental rules may promote the investigation and development of environmentally beneficial techniques. Innovative approaches can be included into commercial endeavors. 4. Holistic approach. Interconnectedness of dimensions. The concept of sustainable development acknowledges the interdependence of environmental, social, and economic aspects. Environmental regulations take these aspects, trade-offs, and synergies into account. Legal frameworks aim to prevent isolated solutions since they acknowledge that the accomplishment of one goal influences the broader environmental agenda. Long-term vision. Sustainable growth requires a long-term strategy that considers the welfare of future generations. Environmental laws provide legal frameworks that adjust to new problems and changes in scientific, social, and economic knowledge. This proactive strategy guarantees that judicial remedies support long-term, sustainable growth. 40. Adaptive management. Environmental rules consider both human needs and ecosystems. Legal frameworks integrate the ideas of adaptive management, which provide the continuous assessment and adjustment of legislation in response to changing environmental circumstances, technology breakthroughs, and public expectations. Put another way, the foundations of environmental law encompass a broad variety of topics, such as regulating interactions between humans and the environment, recognizing indigenous wisdom, embracing cultural values, and adhering to the core ideas of eco-friendly growth. This all-encompassing approach reflects the need for flexible legal frameworks that strike a balance between social fairness, ecological integrity, and economic competitiveness. 3.4. International perspectives, UN climate change policies and certification. 3.4.1. UN climate change policies. A. Global collaboration for climate action. The 1992 United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change provided the groundwork for international collaboration on climate change. Stabilizing greenhouse gas concentrations is the convention's ultimate objective in order to avoid hazardous human influence with the climate system. A couple of significant turning points in global warming history include the Kyoto Protocol, 1997, which imposed legally enforceable carbon reduction targets on wealthy nations, and the Paris Agreement, 2015, a historic agreement designed to keep warming to far below 2 degrees Celsius over pre-industrial levels. 2012 saw the conclusion of the Kyoto Protocol's first commitment period, which was a major turning point in the legal requirements placed on industrialized countries and in favor of the Clean Development Mechanism, CDM, which encourages ecologically sustainable growth in poor countries. 41. B. Commitments and targets. The Paris Agreement, which was ratified at COP21 in 2015, greatly enhanced global climate policy. Countries committed to submitting nationally determined contributions, NDCs, detailing their plans for mitigating climate change. These contributions are updated on a regular basis. The most recent batch of submissions was in 2020. The global stocktake, which is planned every 5 years, can be used to gauge collective progress towards the agreement's objectives. The 2021 COP26 had a pivotal role in propelling the discourse on elevating countries' aspirations towards climate change and addressing matters such as climate financing and adaptation. Among the noteworthy milestones of 2021 was the adoption of the Glasgow Climate Pact, a series of resolutions that addressed major concerns such as global climate financing, adaptation, loss and damage, and the criteria for implementing the Paris Accord. Seed adaptation and mitigation. The Kyoto Protocol established the Climate Change Adaptation Fund, which lends financial support to projects and programs in poor countries to help them deal with the adverse effects of global warming. The significance of resilience and adaptation planning was underscored by the Paris Agreement, underscoring the need of being ready for change. Among the mitigation initiatives that are essential to UN climate policy are switching to renewable energy, improving energy efficiency, and minimizing deforestation. The Global Climate Action Agenda was launched in 2016 at COP22 and urges non-state actors to support mitigation efforts, including businesses and communities. 3.4.2 Global Efforts and Initiatives. A. International collaboration. A comprehensive worldwide framework to address biodiversity loss was established in 1992, with the Convention on Biological Diversity, CBD. Within the CBD, a series of precise 42 objectives centered around different facets of biodiversity preservation were known as the HE Biodiversity Targets, 2010 to 2020. The Minamata Convention on Mercury was ratified in 2013 with the intention of safeguarding the environment and public health from man-made emissions and releases of mercury and its compounds. This treaty covers the transboundary transportation of hazardous materials. A path for global biodiversity protection is being negotiated as part of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, which seeks to build on the lessons learned from the HE targets. B. Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Adopted in 2015, the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, offer a comprehensive framework that includes environmental, social, and economic aspects. The need of taking action to stop global warming and its effects is emphasized in Goal 13. The SDGs, through Goal 17, highlights the need of global collaborations for sustainable development. Environmental law states that genuine progress in solving global concerns requires collaboration. The Decade of Action and Delivery for Sustainable Development is one of the current efforts that emphasizes environmental sustainability within the larger development agenda. 3.4.3 Certification and Standards, e.g., ISO. A. Role of ISO standards in environmental management. International standards for sustainability. Environmental management systems can be guided by internationally recognized recommendations provided by ISO standards, particularly ISO 14001. Environmental law acknowledges the importance of these rules in determining how organizations behave. 43. Compliance with ISO standards demonstrates a dedication to resource efficiency, pollution control, and sustainable operations. Legal frameworks can include ISO standards by referencing them in regulations or offering incentives to companies who use them. This alignment guarantees the sharing of best practices in environmental management. Certification and credibility. Obtaining ISO certification in environmental management necessitates a thorough assessment conducted by independent third parties. The legitimacy of companies is improved in the eyes of stakeholders, such as investors, consumers, and regulatory bodies, by this certification. It makes companies more credible in the perspective of investors, consumers, and government regulators. Companies that get ISO certification are frequently acknowledged and rewarded by the legislation, which promotes the broad use of environmentally friendly practices. B. Are certification processes and their impact. Third-party certification. For many environmental certificates, third-party organizations evaluate and confirm adherence to set requirements. These institutions are essential to preserving credibility and neutrality throughout the certification procedure. The legislative frameworks may outline the conditions for third-party certification, guaranteeing that certifying authorities follow particular rules and preserve their independence. This ensures that products and services that are certified adhere to recognized guidelines for environmental sustainability. 44. Market access and consumer trust. Businesses can access new markets through certification procedures. Environmental legislation states that market access is crucial for items that have received environmental certification. Businesses that follow established protocols have a competitive advantage and access to consumer marketplaces that prioritize sustainable and eco-friendly options. Legal frameworks that require information disclosure and openness help to increase customer confidence in items that are certified. Customers may then use this information to make decisions that are in line with their environmental beliefs. The United Nations policies and certification processes, which highlight global viewpoints in environmental legislation, show a dedication to international collaboration, shared accountability, and the integration of environmentally friendly practices into a variety of businesses. These projects help to support a concerted global effort to solve urgent environmental concerns. 3.5. The role of technology in environmental management. 3.5.1. Technology innovations for environmental conservation. A. Renewable energy technologies. A global transition towards cleaner and more sustainable energy sources is being propelled by the development of renewable energy technology. Among the technologies propelling this change are geothermal energy, hydroelectric electricity, and wind turbines. Laws pertaining to the environment acknowledge the significance of these technologies in lowering reliance on fossil fuels, preventing climate change, and fostering energy independence. The role that these technologies play in advancing energy independence is acknowledged by environmental regulations. Innovations in wind turbine design for improved energy extraction and the development of next-generation solar panels that increase efficacy and cost are examples of recent accomplishments. To facilitate the integration of various technologies, policies, research and development initiatives, and financial incentives are employed. 45. B. Precision agriculture and smart farming. To improve farming, a plethora of technological tools, including sensors, data mining, and GPS tracking technology, are integrated into precision farming. Through resource efficiency and environmental impact minimization, this method maximizes overall agricultural sustainability while reducing negative effects on the environment. Environmental laws encourage the implementation of precision farming through grants, subsidies, and legislation that support environmentally friendly agricultural methods, acknowledging the potential of this technology. Continuous monitoring of crops, soil conditions, and weather patterns is made possible by the Internet of Things (IoT) in the agricultural sector, allowing farmers to make data-driven decisions. Laws are modified to make sure that these technologies respect environmental protections. They include things like efficient use of water, getting rid of pesticides, and maintaining healthy soil. 3.5.2. Digital solutions in monitoring and compliance. A. Remote sensing and satellite technology. Satellite technology and remote sensing offer useful instruments for tracking local and worldwide environmental changes. These devices give real-time information on things like cutting forests, changing land uses, the quality of the air and water, and other important indicators. Environmental laws employ satellite data for monitoring, making sure that rules on emissions, conservation, and land use are followed. Environmental laws employ satellite data for monitoring, making sure that rules on emissions, conservation, and land use are followed. The most recent developments in satellite technology include improved data transport capabilities, improved photography, and improved spectrum analysis. Technological skills are incorporated into legal frameworks to enhance enforcement processes, identify environmental infractions, and support evidence-based decision-making. 46. B. Blockchain for transparency and traceability. Blockchain technology addresses environmental problems associated with illicit operations, such as the cutting of forests and the trafficking of animals, by providing transparency and traceability to supply chains. Ensuring the veracity of environmental claims through the creation of an immutable and distributed ledger encourages moral and ecologically responsible corporate behavior. Environmental rules include blockchain-based certification and traceability systems that encourage supply chain transparency. It promotes ethical sourcing and production methods in addition to opposing unlawful activity. 3.5.3. Integrating technology into environmental legislation. A. Environmental data management systems. Comprehensive environmental data management systems concentrate data on biodiversity, air and water quality, climate change, and other important environmental factors. These digital platforms enable policymakers with the insights required for evidence-based decision-making. Legal frameworks that require consistent reporting through these systems are an adaptation to the digital era. This improves environmental performance monitoring, adherence, and assessment. B. Artificial intelligence, AI, for predictive modeling. Machine learning and predictive modeling are two AI applications that help us comprehend future environmental trends more deeply. These instruments may be used to pinpoint possible pollution hotspots, forecast the effects of climate change, and enhance conservation efforts. Environmental law may employ artificial intelligence to create scenarios and evaluate risks, enabling a proactive approach to addressing impending environmental concerns before. 47. They get out of hand. This proactive approach improves the regulatory framework's ability to adapt to new circumstances. C. Smart regulations and compliance monitoring. Technologically advanced rules simplify compliance processes. With the use of real-time monitoring, Internet of Things sensors, and automated reporting systems, regulators can effectively monitor and enforce environmental regulations. This increases the effectiveness of government supervision while reducing the administrative burden on businesses. Smart regulatory measures are encouraged by environmental regulations, since they foster efficiency and creativity in compliance monitoring. Adopting technology increases the adaptability and responsiveness of regulatory frameworks to the dynamic nature of environmental issues. 3.5.4 Benefits and challenges of technological integration. A. Environmental benefits. Technological innovations bring several benefits to environmental management, such as increased efficacy, improved data accuracy, and more effective resource protection. By reducing environmental effects via the use of technology like precision agriculture and renewable energy, sustainable development goals may be met. Environmental laws promote a culture of innovation and conscientious resource use by supporting and incorporating these technologies. Because legal frameworks are kept up to date with technological improvements, they continue to be strong and useful in solving modern environmental concerns. B. Challenges and considerations. Although technology integration has many benefits, it also has many drawbacks, including worries about cybersecurity, personal information protection, and fair use of digital. 48. Technologies. Legislative frameworks must contain clauses that protect private environmental information, encourage digital inclusion, and stop technology from being abused to harm the environment. Legislation should take into account the possible effects of developing technology on the environment. Regulations for the appropriate management of electronic waste may be necessary, due to factors such as the manufacture and disposal of electronic gadgets. In summary, technology plays a wide role in environmental management, encompassing technological breakthroughs for conservation, digital solutions for compliance and monitoring, and the incorporation of technology into legal frameworks. This dynamic interplay between technology and environmental legislation gives rise to sustainable practices, informed decision-making, and the continuous adaptation of regulatory frameworks to face new concerns in the digital age. 3.6 Emerging environmental challenges. 3.6.1 Identifying contemporary environmental issues. A. Biodiversity loss and ecosystem degradation. Examples of biodiversity loss include the extinction of some species and the deterioration of ecosystems. An instance of concern is the concerning decline in bee numbers, which are essential for pollinating several crops. Climate change, habitat loss, and pesticide usage all pose threats to their existence. Laws provide protected pollinator habitats, control the use of pesticides, and support sustainable agriculture methods. Logging is posing tremendous risks to the Amazon rainforest, harming its diversity and altering global weather patterns. Environmental laws strive to stop deforestation in a number of methods, including strict land use regulations, fines for illicit logging, and programs that promote environmentally beneficial forestry techniques. 49. B. Climate change impacts and extreme events. The effects of global warming are demonstrated by the rise in the frequency and intensity of extreme weather occurrences. Hurricanes Katrina and Maria left behind horrific aftermaths that demonstrate extensive devastation and displaced people. In response, environmental rules support emission reduction methods, encourage climate-smart farming, and impose strict infrastructural standards. Sea level rise is a global hazard to coastal populations. Serious risks concern island nations such as the Maldives. In order to alleviate the effects of sea level rise, the legislative framework plans for controlled retreats, puts coastal protection measures into place, and encourages international cooperation. 3.6.2 Global Trends and Their Implications. Urbanization and environmental pressures. Cities like Beijing, which struggle with extreme air pollution from industries and high traffic, are prime examples of the trend toward faster urbanization. In order to enhance air quality and reduce environmental burdens, environmental laws in such urban regions place a strong emphasis on regulating eco-friendly construction practices, encouraging public transportation, and setting rigorous emission restrictions. Urban green zones are in more and more danger. Examples such as the Gardens by the Bay initiative show how regulatory frameworks may give priority to green infrastructure, so striking a balance between environmental preservation and urban expansion. The resource scarcity and sustainable consumption. One of the best examples of this is the water crisis in Cape Town, which came dangerously close to day zero, when the city was probably going to run out of water due to a combination of drought and bad management. Regulations promoting water conservation, investments in desalination technology, and public awareness campaigns are examples of legal measures that encourage responsible water use. 50. The loss of non-renewable resources is one indicator of how the mining sector affects ecosystems. The development of sustainable resource extraction technology is encouraged, mine reclamation standards are put into place, and responsible mining activities are enforced by environment laws. 3.6.3 The evolving role of legislation in addressing new challenges. Innovations in environmental law. One creative reaction to climate change is the creation of carbon markets. A prime example is the EU Emissions Trading System, ETS, which allows carbon permits to be traded in addition to having an emissions cap. Such solutions are supported by legal frameworks to encourage corporate sector carbon reduction. Participation in decision-making processes can take the form of citizen assemblies on environmental policy. Nations such as France have experimented with citizen assemblies to deliberate on climate policy, guaranteeing wider community participation in legislative frameworks. Transboundary environmental issues. Air pollution is a problem that is addressed through regional agreements. The European Union's Air Quality Directive, which sets universal criteria for air quality throughout its member states, emphasizes the need of working together to address global environmental concerns. The Mekong River Basin serves as evidence that legal frameworks for fair water management are necessary for shared water resources. To encourage environmentally responsible water usage and lessen conflict, the Mekong River Commission sets rules and recommendations for watershed nations. 51. Seek integration of indigenous knowledge. Indigenous Protected Areas, IPAs, in Australia are an example of how indigenous knowledge supports conservation efforts. IPAs combine traditional ecological knowledge with modern conservation techniques to conserve biodiversity and advance sustainable land management. Laws honor the contributions made by Native Americans to environmental conservation. Working together with indigenous groups demonstrates how legal frameworks may respect indigenous rights, include communities in decision-making, and incorporate traditional knowledge into conservation initiatives. One example of this is the relationship between conservation organizations and the Maasai people in Kenya. The discussion of new environmental issues demonstrates how legal frameworks have practical applications. From the loss of biodiversity to the effects of climate change, urbanization, resource scarcity, and cooperative international efforts, legal answers are varied and dynamic, tackling complex issues while aiming for long-term fixes.